Hello, everyone, and welcome back to EU Masters. I can't hear anything. My headset is not working. I don't know why.
Can you still not hear anything?
No? I can't hear Dagger at all. I hope you're doing all right, buddy. Had a hell of a game there. Had some fun. We're just going to have to do sign language.
All right, perfect. So what I'll do is I'm going to take this and then I'm going to let Munch kind of fix this thing. I'm going to message him on Discord and tell him that I can talk all the live long day. Fix your headset, mate, and I will cover. And then we're just going to keep going because realistically, I actually sabotaged Munch so I can just talk about these highlights. We're going to roll into the highlights though. We're going to see exactly how this one panned out because honestly, this was a very slow kind of game in the early stages where both teams kind of taking a couple of kills here and there, but no one really wanted to go for these big team fights. Well, though, eventually, as we started to crest into, the third dragon, started to look at things like the Baron, that's where we started to see the difference coming through, where Unicorns of Love had just built up this really strong composition that could fight through a strong mid-game, and with the early advantages that they got, it became really difficult for Aletta to try and go toe-to-toe to that, especially when you look at just how well Unicorns of Love are setting up for these fights as well. Like the positioning really strong, making sure they always had Lyrics as that front line, getting onto key carries, and honestly a lot of the times kind of separating it the fight enough that like Ruby could find these isolated 1v1s or look for these quick picks that made it very hard for Atleta to really find their footing in the mid game.
Yeah, it felt very difficult for Atleta to get back in. I'm back, by the way. It was my audio driver that crashed. That was what was going on there. As it felt like a lot of these fights looked very similar, right? Dreamer Ice just dipping around Lyric, setting up, and then Ruby, Reptile, and Ibo just blasting the damage across the team. Felt difficult for Atleta to be able to really return anything. Ends, fair play to him on that one. Like, valiant efforts trying to turn around the play at the end there, but when you're playing a Lucian so short-ranged into this kind of composition, it doesn't feel like there's much you can do.
I felt so sorry for Enz. Like, Enz usually gets a lot of the resources on Atleta, but this time he just got left high and dry as a lot of the resources on Atleta were used to try and like get Gabbo into a good position in the top lane, but it meant that Enz just never had an opportunity in this game. Like, you're a Lucian that won a spikes in the mid game, you've lost out completely in like the CS department, turret plates, your turret has gone over to this misfortune on the opposite side, and then you're a short range carry that has to try and go into that accelerated bullet time that has a ton of items behind it, so it becomes really hard to play the game. And I can't even blame Enz for like 99% of this game. It's just an unfortunate situation that put him just up a creek without a paddle.
Yeah, I feel like Ibo's the guy to talk about though, right? Like the solo kills during the laning phase. The amount of damage she was putting out, I mean, you can see that matching up with the misfortune, which in this kind of composition is saying a lot about how much work you're putting in on the Rumble. And we said back in Champ Select of that game, Ibo, he's only played it twice in his career. He's only won one of those games. Is he going to be able to bring the Rumble out? Is he going to be able to give us a good performance? Level 2 flashing for a kill. Yeah, no, this guy knows how to play Rumble. Don't worry about it. He's got it on lock.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ibo's been around for ages. Like, we saw him on Ego Rogue, we saw him on Illuminar Gaming, back over in the Polish League. Now he's kind of moved over back in towards the Prime League. And the big thing is, like, Ibo, for me, has always kind of been one of these ultra-strong top laners, but we just haven't seen him being able to, like, break past quarterfinals. Like, he hit that with Illuminar, he hit that with Rogue, but we haven't seen him get past that last little push. And maybe this time around, as we can see him potentially looking to take that second place spot with UOL, like just on the cusp of it, maybe we'll finally get to see what he's capable of as he moves into the knockout stage.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if Ibo can make it to... First off, we have to see if he will make it to quarterfinals before we can see if he makes it past quarterfinals, right? It's not locked in just yet for the Unicorns. Let's take a look at our standings on where we are so far in the day as we wrap up our second game of the day. We're over in Group D, so move your eyes down to the bottom right of the screen there. You can see LDLC 4-0 so far. The Unicorns now, with that win on the board, are 3-1, which means they are just a singular win or a singular Bison's loss away from securing their place in the quarterfinals, whereas Atleta now out of the running, unfortunately.
Yeah, Atleta not going to be in the running, but are going to be going up against LDLC next, so we'll have to see if maybe they can just get that one upset win, like just take LDLC down a smidge of a peg. And certainly, the last time we saw these two teams face off, it was an absolute bloodbath. It was crazy, so I'm kind of excited to see what these two teams are going to bring to the table.
And I feel like I said it earlier on, and I'll say it again. Atlanta are here to play spoiler now. The gloves are off. They're already out. They can't make it to the quarterfinals. So let's see some blood. Let's see some crazy picks. Let's see just chaos on the Rift. LDLC, on the other hand, I mean, you've basically secured your spot at this point. So let's see some crazy picks. Let's see some. I'll find a way. I'll find a way to extend the logic. I just want to see chaos. But I feel like, as you say, the first time we saw these guys go head to head, we did see that chaos. I feel like this is one of the matchups where that's a very real possibility.
I think the LPL has changed you, man. You used to like clean league. Well, maybe not clean League of Legends, but yeah, trying to play for a lot of it. But now you're kind of looking, well, we need kills, we need action. But I really do think we're going to get it. I mean, I think a lot more than we got in the last game from Atleta. Because every time I've looked at this team, like, it is very much a case of, hey, look, we want to try and play around ends in the bottom side of the map. Did we get that from Atleta this time? Not really, right? We end up seeing them playing much more towards Gabo, trying to help him out in the bad matchup he had, and it just felt like Atleta didn't really feel comfortable playing through that style. We never got to see them go for these like skirmishes in River and dragon fights that they really like to try and take. I mean, we've even seen them like have Gabo like TP in just for a quick brawl on the bot side, you know, like with your Sunday coffee as you go on your merry way. Like, this is kind of style that you see from Atleta. But I didn't get to see it in the last game. I really want to see it here against LDLC. And like, kind of just put the fire under LDLC, right? Like, we know this is a team that likes to take a slower pace early game, likes to then look into the later game at these team fights. But I mean, I just love seeing when you're kind of testing these top teams, just going, hey, look, we're just going to skill check you and see what you bring to the table.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly what I want to see coming into this one. Let's take a look at our lineups as we head towards our third game of our day. And we'll start off with LDLC, because obviously up against Atleta here, 4-0. And when you look across the team, we already talked, I mean, we literally spoke to Ica earlier on, but across this board, a lot of experience to be talked about. But I'm excited about Yike specifically. Yike is the guy that stood out to me earlier on today on his Viego. I want to see him on another carry jungle.
Genuinely, I think Yike is the best early pathing jungler that we have in Amazon European Masters right now. Like, I love the way he's able to like set up his team for success. He'll like pick his pathing directly around like how it, like, say for example, Exakick and DOS may have a priority pushing lane bot, but they'll actually like allow the opposition to push into them, and suddenly Yike is down there for a kill. Like, they're very smart with how they play around their early jungle routes, and it just makes me super excited to see like what Yike is going to be able to achieve. Because as we said, like, first Amazon EU Masters for him, and he's just come off the back of winning the LFL. Like, this is a guy that I'm keeping my eyes on, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like Exakick as well is a guy to look towards, because he made semi-finals back in 2020 summer, and it was on LDLC as well. But today, we saw him earlier on, like, for the early game, very, very quiet on the FLS, just farming up. But once we got to those team fights, popping off, willing to be aggressive, was comfortably the big damage source for this team. And if we see compositions like we saw in that last game from them, we'll have to have a lot of eggs in that Exakick basket. And I feel like he's the kind of player that wants to prove himself. First seed from the LFL. He wants to get a championship under his belt, not just a semi-final.
Yeah, it does feel like a lot of this team is big players that are looking to step up to the mark, but they're going up against Atleta on the opposite side, and this is a team that will not want to bow out without taking a couple of punches and giving a few hits first. And again, like, looking towards guys like Cospect, we've seen him have some good performances in the regional league. We're hoping to see him step up a little bit to have like those big engages, right? Like, looking at Mighty Dragon as well to see if he can play around ends and Cospect in this bottom lane, because that feels more like where it's the comfort zone. And even we saw ends and Cospect like face up against LDLC as well. Like, we could see them going for these super aggressive plays where they're actually able to get some help from Mighty Dragon and like take over to a certain extent, I will say, in the bot lane. So it definitely feels like Atleta want to try and find these fights through the mid and bot side of the map.
And one of the things I feel like a lot of our audience don't know about this team as well is that Gabo and Cospect have played together before. If you think back 2 years ago, 2020 Spring EU Masters, the two players played in the group stage on YDN Esports together. They went 2-4 in the end, didn't manage to make it to the quarterfinals, but we have some long-time teammates here that I'm hoping we get to see maybe Cospect roam up to that top side, you know, play towards his old top laner, play towards trying to set him up, or maybe, as you said earlier, we'll see the whole team playing towards that bottom lane once again. And we'll have to see. Obviously, it's going to depend on the draft. Dagda, I believe we are very close to the draft. So let's talk about it. what do you want to see out from Atleta? What can they bring out that will give them a chance against LDLC?
Yeah, I think the big one is just, again, going back towards these early priority junglers, right? Like, we've seen the Volley and the Jarvan are the two big ones for Mighty Dragon. I want to go towards that once more and make sure you have that comfort pick there. But also just having a bit more aggressive bot lane for ends. Like, we saw him bring out the Lucian, but no utility or no advantages given to him in that bot side. Like, you know he's a Draven player. You know he wants to play for these aggressive styles of matchups, so give him the tools and give him the resources he needs to do that.
It's going to be Trundle and Volibear, both typically picked into each other, or at least Trundle picked into Volibear, both banned off the board, as well as that Silas removed from Zonix. Could likely see that Vex that we saw from Zonix as well. He seemed like a very solid Vex player earlier on today. But with the Zeri removed as well, feels like LDLC have a lot of those comfort picks available to them that we saw earlier on with that full scaling composition.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing as well, is that because you're kind of focusing on like specific bans coming through for like the likes of Zonix with the Silas, you're leaving like these big meta picks open, like the Ari, for example, that was super impactful for, has been super impactful for Ica. LeBlanc open as well, which Ica has been really good at getting his hands on and having those performances that he needs to. So I definitely think you've got a ton of options here in the mid lane. And even then, if you want to go back for something like the Viego for Yike, that is still available as well.
We'll see. The Aphelios taken off the board with that Veigar ban, though, and with Ari open and available, you got to believe Ika's going to first pick it. Like, why else would you go for the Veigar ban? It just, at least to me, that's what it screams. I've been wrong once before, Dagda. One time. It was honestly the worst memory I have in my whole life, but I'm hoping I don't repeat it.
Yeah, the day you became friends with me. But either way, I mean, now Viego, right, picked up already for Yike, prioritizing this jungler. I think Yike has been incredibly strong on this pick, and I'm not surprised to see it locked in again. And it does give you a lot of pressure if you do get these like RE picks, if you do get these strong mid laners like the LeBlanc, like you just try and play through that mid and really shut down Zonix and shut down Mighty Dragon and Zonix as well, just to make sure that they're not in the most comfortable spots.
Jinx locked in here, and potentially a very aggressive jungler in that Xin Zhao. That's one of the things he can do against Viego, right? Punish with an aggressive jungle pick. So the Xin Zhao could be an option. It's not something that has been massively in the meta. It feels like ever since those nerfs a while ago, it sort of fell out of favor, but could be an option here for Dragon, and he's going to lock it in.
Yeah, we still see the Xin Zhao occasionally just more as a, hey, I need early aggression, and I don't have a Jarvan, I don't have a Volibear, and although Jarvan is available, I just don't think it works the best setup when you got something like a Jinx. Like, obviously creating more terrain for her is a bit of a pain, plus the ability for the Viego to steal him away if he dies and then turn around the fight as well just makes it very difficult. There's that Ari that we were talking about though, and Xayah going to be locked in here. An incredibly strong pick against the Jinx. It makes it so difficult for her to position in fights when there's just feathers all over the damn place and she's going to be worried about being ruined.
Yep, very nice setup here from LDLC, and I'm excited because it's a bit more of an aggressive setup than what we saw earlier on from them. I feel like there's a bit more proactivity here, which fills me with joy. Gabo just going to be going for the Ornn, though. His game earlier on the Nard. Not too pleased with the result from that one. So going for the scaling up against LDLC with that Jinx, with that Ornn. I feel like they need an aggressive mid laner, though, right? Alongside that Xin Zhao. I feel like you need some agency against a team like LDLC.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, Zonix doesn't have the LeBlanc, at least he's played this split, so maybe not feeling the most comfortable to go for a matchup like that. And this is where I'm like, okay, I asked for the Ryze in the last game, I think Ryze could still fit in here, but other than that, I mean, Zonix, you know, the Silas already taken off the board. I think Victor is a definite no-no here. I think you just end up with too much pressure being given across the mid-jungle of LDLC. And then, even then, like, we're kind of dipping down into, like, the Oriannas, the Yone that at least Sonic has played in the previous time, but I don't think the Yone gives you much. The Orianna could maybe be the pick, but I think just kind of having that push with the Ryze would give you a lot to work with here, and even just give you strong team fight as well.
Yeah, we'll see. The Ryze could be an option. Whether or not they're going to go for that blind, though, we'll have to see, because support still needs to be picked up for Atleta, so could wait until the very last pick and go for that. But realistically, you already know the mid lane that you're against, so why not go for the mid lane now and then have the counter pick for support?
Yeah, sorry, just surprised to see the LeBlanc ban, just because I was like, you know, Zonix hasn't played it, but you can still see the ideas there from LDLC where it's like, look, just stop any sort of aggressive mid lane pick that can answer for this, but we'll have to see what Atleta can do. Maybe you do just go for the support pick here where you're like, all right, you know, let's take something like the Nautilus in the spot lane, something that can do pretty well and just setting up this aggressive play onto the Ahri, and onto the Zai as well. But we are going to get the Victor, so Atleta going full late game scaling, and honestly with this pick, they're kind of going, right, well, you know, take the wheel, because you're just hands off until the later portion of the game. You don't really have the opportunity to get much push in bot, much push in mid, and dragon control is going to be really hard for them, so they're kind of hoping LDLC play this super slow game and maybe they can fight them at 2.5 to 3 items.
If we get that gangplank, it's bad news bears.
Yeah.
For the side of Atleta, right? With the gangplank, plenty of scaling, plenty of gold, and a free lane against that one on the top side. Aggressive bottom lane, aggressive mid jungle. This is feeling real good for LDLC. And Atleta, like, this comp looks fantastic later on. Like, if you could get to that late game. But I feel like LDLC is one of those teams that's going to play pretty aggressively and should be able to close the game out before you can get to that scaling.
Now, in theory, LDLC don't have a very strong front line, right? So maybe you can find some fights for Atleta in that way. Like, Jinx gets excited, you got a ton of damage that can come out from the Victor, I think you're good. But I think LDLC just have so much control in the bottom half of the map and in that mid lane to make plays happen early. And as you said, like, right late game scaling with the gangplank, the ability to one-shot essentially the back line of Atleta, given the chance. It feels like LDLC have just given themselves so many tools to operate in these fights. And for Atleta, even going for the defensive Tahm Kench here, like, you are very much going, hey, we don't really have an opportunity to make much plays in the early stage. And that's why I'm kind of surprised to see the Xin Zhao, to be honest. Like, if you're going to go for it, like, go for something like the Xin, you kind of want to pair with a strong mid jungle that you can use the early advantages of Xin Zhao, but you just don't really have it here as Atleta.
Feels like we're playing 3 weak side lanes here on the side of Atleta, which is a difficult strategy to pull off. If they can scale indefinitely, I mean, there are some carries that are Jinx, Victor, Ornn, like, that feels good in the late game. My question is, can they make it to the late game? LDLC, though, on the other hand, they have the tools to really put their foot down. And for me, now I'm looking at LDLC and I'm like, okay, let's see what you got. Because we saw you play super slow, super calculated scaling earlier on today. Now you've locked in this competition with plenty of early aggression, plenty of proactivity. Let's see an aggressive game. Let's see you build a snowball and push it forward before the scaling comes into the conversation. We'll have to find out if they can do it back there as we head on Summoner's Rift for our 3rd game of the day.
And again, there's no real pressure on LDLC, at least in the first 6 minutes of the game, right? You can go a little bit slow. You don't have to worry too much about how things are going. Just let the lanes play out standard, right? You hit level 3, you pretty much have push in bot lane, you have good push in top side, and you can just like, all right, we'll get some Scuttle Crabs, we'll get some vision control that we need, and you can start to then kind of look towards, okay, how do we fight for Rift Child? How do we start to stack up these early dragons? Because objective control needs to be on LDLC's side so they can put that pressure onto Atleta to fight early and kind of push those advantages forward into the mid game.
Yeah, we need to see them trying to find those advantages and trying to push forward. But whether or not they can, it's a different question, right? It's a different situation. Exekick, I'm keeping my eyes on as well. We mentioned him when we were looking at the lineup. And I feel like this is a player with a lot of potential. He's been looking fantastic in the LFL. And now in EU Masters, he is 4-0 so far. He's made it to the semi-finals before, but he wants it all. Right now, they've already secured their spot for the quarterfinals. The question will be, can they guarantee that first seed? And I feel like Exekick, he's going to be one of the guys that needs to be successful in this bottom lane.
Well, he's got the tools to do it. I mean, you've got the strongest AD carry in the patch, in my opinion, in Exekick's hands. You've got the strongest mid laner in the patch in Ika's hands, in my opinion, as well. And, I mean, if you've got that much control and tools to use in the early stages, I wouldn't be surprised to see LDLC kind of using that once they get to, like, the level 6. They start to get these roams off, and they can start to look towards things like Dragon.
Yep, Dragon certainly could be an option for them. Speaking of Dragon, he's up at the top side right now. Different Dragon, but he is clearing away on the Krugs. Going for the full clear, which sometimes on the Xin Zhao, you'll see people forgo things like the Krugs, go for early ganks instead. But, you know, we already talked about the lane matchups. We already talked about the assignments here. It's going to be difficult for Dragon to find advantages in the jungle, to find opportunities to get in the lanes. With that said, though, if you get pushed in all 3 lanes, does give you opportunities to gank, that's for sure.
It does, but it just makes it very difficult to get, like, controlling river, right? And, like, make sure that you're not being spotted out by wards and that. So, I think for Mighty Dragon, like, going for this full clear is probably your best bet. Chances are, you know, that Yike can start on this bot lane, at least with the fact that Exekick and DOS were late to lane. So, Mighty Dragon's like, hey, look, I just full clear first time. Then maybe when I get this initial reset in, we can start to actually look for a little bit more when it comes towards the lanes and ganks. Because realistically, I feel like you need to at least kind of plaster some holes into the ship here, because otherwise, I mean, LDLC can kind of just run away with the early game. But again, we've seen LDLC take it slow, not want to put that pressure down, so we'll have to see if LDLC will actually make these early plays happen.
Yeah, will they put their foot down? Because, you know, earlier on today, they had no reason to. I think that's the big thing, is like, we have to consider whether or not there is reason to, because ultimately, you know, Xayah, depends on the build that you go for. It's likely that lethality, so in the conversation of scaling, not going to do super well later on into the game. Ica as well on this Ahri, not really a late game pick, so I feel like this time around, there is an argument to be made. The one person that doesn't want to be playing for the late game, though, is Ragnar in that top side. And I'm excited to see his gangplank. He's played it 4 times in his career, 75% win rate. But more importantly, just as a player, I feel like Ragnar is very, very exciting. He's a top player who, you know, who was in the Turkish scene for a long time on Supermassive Galatasaray as well, and has been so close, not to go into EU Masters, to go to MSI and Worlds on those teams. And now in EU Masters, he feels like one of the best top laners in the league. I'm going to have to hold my thought because Dragon's in trouble, but he's going to get caught out in a 3v1. He thought he was ganking. He was the one that was ganked.
But remember what we said, the reason that you can't always go for these early plays is because you don't have vision control on River, and that pink in or just in the pixel brush there spotted him out early, didn't realize that he was sitting on the ward, and meant that LDLC reacted beautifully. DOS actually roaming up to the mid lane just off that reset. It was perfect timing there for the French representatives.
Very nicely done, reading them like a book. And a nice advantage there. And crucially, Ica getting first blood. Like, we saw what Ica can do with a lead. We saw the solo kills earlier on today from Ica, and that was on his Orianna. Now he's on Ahri. He's on an assassin. He's on a champion that can be so aggressive around the map. And already we're seeing that in the mid lane as he procs electrocute against Onyx, just looking to shove this wave in, and perhaps go for a reset, spend some of the gold that he's earned for himself.
Yeah, it was just a great reset timing from DOS there. TP just the top side there for the Orn, but yeah, I gotta say, like, DOS has actually been really impressive, and we've seen DOS like a couple of times over the course of EU Masters as well, but hasn't really found himself in like the super top upper echelon of like supports that we've seen coming through EU Masters. Like, you look at Targamas, who's moved on, you look at some of the other talent that we've seen from the support pool that's moved on into the LEC, but DOS has slowly but surely been kind of making him a name for himself as he starts to improve, like where he wants to try and find these reset timers. Like the one he just had, super quick timer that he was able to work off of and find that moment into the mid lane. So it's kind of cool to see DOS again kind of stepping up over, you know, several years that we've seen him in EU Masters to now being one of the top supports that we have, not only in, you know, the LFL, but in EU Masters in general.
Yeah, feels good to see that growth off the player. Exekick forced a flash to the bottom side. Good play from Kospek. Forces that summoner out from the enemy ADC. And that means DOS now has to be a little bit more careful on those times. We're talking about the reset, we're talking about the roam to the Drake. Well, Exekick feeling the wrath of that.
Yeah, and just a nice job from Kospek to realize, look, DOS wasn't in lane, Exekick was slightly overextended. Now, MX Dragon, our Mighty Dragon, even here as well, to make sure that he can try and make this play happen, but we'll end up just backing away. But now that LDLC have shown, Kospek just going to start bullying forward. So not going to try and continue forward. But for Kospek, it's been kind of cool to see his progression as well. But Mighty Dragon now actually still looking boss.
Does want to try and make a play. Exekick, remember, no flash available if Kospek can find the knockup. Dragon will be able to follow up. He's level 6 too. This is the chance here, but they're not going to find it. Exekick just walks away. Literally no damage. There we go. One tongue lash is all Atlanta get for themselves. But Enz, on the very least, has had this wave in such a bad position for Exekick for so long. Look at that CS lead. 20 CS in the bottom lane.
And this is what I wanted to see, right? Like, this is where Atlanta are able to actually find these advantages, is playing around Enz. And, like, for Enz and Kospek, right, the two Estonian players, it's been incredible to see them as they've kind of, like, grown, at least more so Cospect, because one of the big things from my time, at least in the Baltic Masters, that people talked about over there was like how you progress as a player in the Baltics is like finding success in the Baltics and then kind of looking at these bigger regions like the PG Nats. And for Cospect and ENS, both Estonian players that, I mean, at least for Cospect, we've seen in the Baltics to now be performing well in PG Nats, it's just really good to see.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. DOS used his minion dematerializer and just took the cannon. Exakick wasn't close enough to share the gold, so...
See, this is how you know that I'm the support main and you're the AD carry main. You got terrified by that prospect, and I was like, good on you, DOS. Do it again.
You can share the gold! Why would you want it just for yourself?
To send a message that you need to understand your place in this bot lane.
Hang on. So, as the AD carry main, let me just talk about the fact that Exakick lost so many minions.
No, we don't have time. We're on to Rift Herald. Oh no, Rift Herald.
There was like a 19 stacked wave on the bottom side. Exakick will dodge away from the knock up here. Big damage onto ENS. Ignite is going to go down. Here we go, DOS. Finding a kill. 1v1's the enemy AD carry. Cospect forced to flash away as well. Very nicely done. And that lead that was built up for ENS over Exakick, a lot of that's going to go away from this wave being crashed.
And never would have happened if he didn't get that one kill onto the cannon going towards DOS. Gives him the advantage that he needs to secure that kill. Cospect?
Oh, Solar Flare DOS. Oh, he wanted to go for it, but not going to commit in the end. Yike in the meantime. Up in that top side. We'll be able to go for the Herald. The reset came through from Dragon and Zonix, and it means that LDLC, they win the 2v2 at the bottom side, and now they're winning objectively at the top side as well. Everything off to a great start for LDLC.
And look, this is what we talked about, right? Even though the bot lane has been a little bit funky, and Atlanta have actually played that really well, the objectives are still going to LDLC. Dragon gone their way, now the Rift Herald as well. And this was my biggest worry with kind of seeing the Victor mid. And I mean, look, I have been really vocal about how much I dislike Victor in the current meta over in the LPL. I just think he doesn't offer enough in the mid jungle that you need to kind of take over games. And you're kind of seeing it here, right? Ica continues to keep him pushed in, giving so much freedom to Yike to do what he wants. Ragnar as well on that top side having full push. It just means you've got no real options as Atleta to play through anywhere on the map.
On the positive side, at least he will now have that upgraded laser, so there is some contention in terms of the push itself. But yeah, definitely not in terms of the early skirmishing, definitely not in terms of what Ica is bringing to the board right now as Ari in the early game. That's already finished Everfrost as well. Like, Ica, if he finds a charm, and then the Everfrost on top of that with, if someone like DOS or Yike is there, like, there's no way you're getting away from that one. It's already over for you. And that might be Cospect or ENS in the bottom side as DOS finds the Zenith Blade in. Ica following up. There's the charm. Solar Flare. The shield does nothing. ENS will fall as well. Surely Ica looking for the double, but it's Yike to pick up the kill in the end. And now Dragon under the tower. The charm finds him. And DOS goes down for his sins, but 3 for 1. LDLC will take that every day of the week.
That was beautiful from Ica. The double Everfrost sets up perfectly, and now LDLC, I mean, this bot lane may have been looking a little bit shaky at one point, but that memory is long gone at this stage. Rift Herald there, Exakick gets a kill, and now getting all these turret plates as well. Beautiful play from LDLC.
That feels real good for Exakick getting all of those plates, because you can see the CS numbers, right? He is still significantly behind, still 20 CS down, but that isn't going to matter anymore because he got himself that kill, got an assist, and then 5 plates. Oh no, what have I done? I've cast a cursed him. He's stuck in the lane. Blade Caller comes on through. Oh, Cospect saves him. ENS survives. The shield is there, and a shutdown nonetheless for ENS.
It was a nice attempt from Exakick, but unfortunately, sticking around that bit too long, it does get punished. And this will actually give Second Dragon, nobody saw it, Muddy Dragon, it's all right. This will actually give Second Dragon over to Atleta. So at least, you know, buying some more time before Atleta actually have to try and fight for some of these neutral objectives. So really nice job, at least on that pick from Atleta.
Yeah. I will say, as the camera's gone up towards that top side, I don't think we're going to have a fight for a second. It's worth mentioning that the scaling war is on. And the color's almost finished for Ragnar. And the thing is, Gangplank is not the super late game scaler that everyone thinks of anymore. He's going to spike in the mid game. But let's take another look at what happened in this bottom side, because this was honestly just such a nice execution coming out from LDLC.
I mean, that Everfrost Michael was gorgeous. And again, Yike just playing super well around this Viego. Gets the reset. You get another great charm coming through from Ica. Like, the mid jungle doing so much work alongside the bot lane here for LDLC. And now you've already got the Eclipse completed here for Exakick. Will be answered by Ends on the opposite side with the Gale Force. But you're starting to see, you know, first item completed across the board here for LDLC, where we're still picking up the pieces across for on Atlas's side. And LDLC looking to use that spike to see if they can get a bit aggressive in this topside jungle.
LDLC going to grab that red buff for Yike. Nicely done there. And I just want to quickly mention, Ica has a Dark Seal in his little back pocket there. He's already on 6 stacks. He's kind of feeling himself this game. His Everfrost was on point in the last fight. The charm to get the bonus pick at the end of the fight as well. I'm feeling a little bit scared for Atleta here, because I feel like Ica is looking for an MVP day. Looked amazing earlier on the Orianna. And now, forget the mid laner. It's about these top 3 on the side of LDLC. Looking for a dive onto Gabo. Misses the knock-up, though. TP comes on through. LDLC trying to escape. DOS the target, though. There's a bit of an answer coming out from our PG Nat squad. DOS flashes away, keeps himself alive, and somehow it's a 1 for 0 in favor of LDLC. The reset's coming up through for Yike, but he can't quite finish skill. In comes Ica on the back end of the play. Costep manages to pick him up. Ends trying to finish the kills, but gets none of them. Ica over the wall as he looks for Zonix as well. Charm, will it land? Minion wave in the way. Gabo still underneath this tower. That's where it all started, by the way, as Zonix is here. Finally gets charmed. Finally goes down, and Gabo, we're back to square one. His entire team has died around him as he tries to buy himself time. But Gabo, your days are numbered, my friend. It's over in that top side as Exakick dodges the dodge.
That was more upsetting than watching Shock's snapper pasta into for Italians, because you were so close to getting so many of those kills and you just weren't quite able to get the damage down. And Kospect even like trying to set up Ends, gets the Great Devourer, nearly keeps him alive, but just one kill needed to go over to get the reset, to get the opportunity for Atleta to carry that, but just couldn't quite get it across the finish line.
I just love that the start of the play was Gabo alone. His entire team arrived, his entire team died, and then it was Gabo alone again, and nobody from LDLC going down. Dear. Kospect has been found in the jungle trying to get vision. Such is the life of a support.
Yeah, it was unfortunate there for Kospect, but we get a replay here. Like, Gabo, I mean, this doesn't start off very well, right? You end up not getting the ultimate to hit, and then LDLC look like they're overextended, which is why we get everyone trying to collapse onto this top side. But you can see DOS, great flash away from the tongue lash and also the ult. You've got Yike here who goes incredibly low and even gets rooted, but just in time, Ica comes up. The Devourer has to come through for Kospect to stop the charm onto Ends, and it means that at that stage, the damage is out of the equation. Zonix isn't even able to get into the fight to really get very much off, and LDLC with that find this mid-game spike that they needed, find the gold that they wanted, and now it's looking very difficult for Atleta to try and counteract the massive gold lead LDLC have.
And it's worth mentioning Ragnar as well, because he managed to get a bunch of bonus CS earlier on when he altered the wave that was crashing against Exakick, right? He's finished a cull. He got himself a kill and 2 assists in that last play. He's well on the way towards his second item. And that's where current Gangplank starts to hit like an absolute freight train.
It's this Predator's Claw build is just so incredibly strong. Like, he will just one-shot Zonix or Ends, and there's very little you can do about it. Like, Kospect is just going to be like lucky mouth agape as his AD carry just disappears randomly at some point, and there's just hardly anything Atleta can do. I mean, LDLC already in a position to push in mid. That tower's so low, and maybe that's the go button for LDLC.
Will the minions finish the tower? Exakick walks in for the auto. It's 1v1 with him and Ends. Who wins it? The feathers come in. Down come the cannon shots. And Kospect has to save Ends' life, as both summoners used as well. But Ica finds a charm onto Kospect. Now a pick on the top side of the play. Yike flashing away, but the rocket finds him. Atleta get themselves a pick. What can they do with it, though? Because Ragnar, in the meantime, he's been pushing this entire time.
Ragnar is pushing, but Dragon is up, so maybe we get a second Dragon coming in for Atleta here, so could actually be a little bit of a saving grace. Yike just going that little bit too far forward, and yeah, it looks like Atleta now gets second dragon just off of a sloppy mistake from Yike. May not be enough to write home about, but at least it's a little win where now you can start to push out side waves, collect that gold, and not worry about, you know, that third dragon for quite a while on LDLC side.
It's not just a dragon, though. It's an objective bounty as well. So closing that gold gap to now only 7,000 at the 17-minute mark in favor of LDLC. So, yeah, you know, not ideal, but it's better than it was. It was 7,500. So we take those. Here we go.
Zirconia linings, you know?
He's found Ends, and Ends is going to live up to his name, because that is the end of his life. Dragon wants to contest this red buff, but I don't think this is contestable anymore. We said we wanted a clean game from LDLC. We said we wanted them to push the advantage, to find early leads. Well, they've done it like that.
Look, this has been just LDLC powering through the strong points they have on the map. Yike, 4-1 and 6, nearly has the Blade of the Rune King complete as well. He's going to be able to basically 1v1 anyone on this map. We got Ike as well. 14 stacks on this Magi Soul Stealer. The Shadow Flame going to be coming through very soon as well. Like, he's going to be monstrous, and Zonix might be in trouble here, actually. He needs to be careful he doesn't take that step too far forward.
That was a Hex Splash.
Yeah,
it was a Hex Splash,
yeah. I got
like
a little worried. It was more how quickly he was going underneath that tower. I was like, hang on a second, you have no idea where anyone is.
Well, he does now, because the whole squad is here to try and find a pick. Yike the target for the time being. Call of the Forge God will find the knock-up. There's a follow-up. There's a pick. In the meantime, Ragnar pushing. Gabbo on the flank, though. They want more. They want Ica. They want a kill onto DOS as well. If they can find both, it would be crucial. Half of an inhib tower has gone on the bottom side of the map, though. And no more picks. It's a singular pick for so much into Ragnar's pocket.
And it's looking like a very similar story to what we saw the last time LDLC and Atleta faced up. Atleta would throw everything at the kitchen sink at these fights and trying to make these picks happen, but it would just open up LDLC to play the map better. So you've got damage onto the bot tower, tier 2 mid goes down, and just more control overall for LDLC, despite the little bit of gold going back over in favor of Atleta. Still though, if they can at least keep their waves in check, make sure that they're just absorbing all these waves that are coming into them, get that gold, they are starting to get to a point where, well, sorry, I take that back. There's still another item, essentially, before they can really get to a point where they feel strong enough to take these fights. But, I mean, you've still got about 10 minutes before you really have to fight a dragon. It's just the Baron is the real issue for Atleta.
I'm going to be totally honest, Hector. I don't think LDLC care that much about dragons. No. I think that's the last thing that they're going to be worried about on this one. Is you know, one of the key things I do want to mention about LDLC as well is that, like, while we're talking about them being aggressive, we're talking about them winning all these skirmishes, this isn't just wanton aggression, right? This is calculated. They're playing the map well. They're playing around the fact that they have sideline pressure from Ragnar. The fact that you can see Ica moving up to that top side to push the wave out. Like, this is really clean map play from LDLC. Whether they have a scaling composition or an aggressive composition like this one, they're still playing the map well, and they're still respecting kind of the quote-unquote correct way to play League of Legends.
Yeah, and that's why you kind of get to see what a lot of analysts talk about, like, why you can't go for a pick here, or why you can't overload this part of the map, because you will end up just losing more elsewhere and giving more control across the enemy. Now, Atleta trying to see if they can look for the pick, but will get spotted in the bush.
Yeah, they'll get spotted. Zap goes wide. As oh, that's a route onto Dragon. And that's some damage up from Ica. My goodness. And well, that's 2 blue trinkets that have been used in the Baron pit right now. Ica can just play bodyguard. The rest of LDLC just wander up and go for this one. Dragon back to full HP, but Smite will be available, has a second charge of it. Sonics takes half of his HP as Ica using the ulti. There's a solar flare. Is Dragon the target? They deny any kind of counter play. And LDLC, I mean, this is just a masterclass.
Yeah, this is so well orchestrated from LDLC, and why they're the #1 in the LFL. And honestly, when you look at like a lot of what the LFL teams are able to achieve, it's because, you know, the top LFL teams do scrim against a lot of the LEC teams. They actually have performances that are kind of worthy of being at that top spot in Europe. And you're seeing it on your screens, right? Like the way that they play the map, how they're able to set up. Yes, they are getting caught at times, but it's because they know that they are going to trade up elsewhere. And this clean macro, this ability to play the map is what is honestly separating the LDLC from a lot of the other teams in Amazon European Masters.
Okay, Atleta want to make something happen. That's the Featherstorm used by X-Kick very early in the fight as we have a 1v1 between the junglers. Dragon ain't winning it for now. Feathers come back and don't do much. So the Cannon Barrage is enough to set Yike up with a reset. And in the meantime, you've got Iker on the back of the play. The fight was over before it ever began. And Atleta started to regret that engage, I would wager. There's a kill for Ragnar as well as he just pops him. And Dagda at 23 minutes, I think we might have LDLC ending the game.
Yeah, I mean, you're stopping backs here from Yike. He'll kill Gabbo, and it's just going to be all over for the Italians. LDLC are looking at the base.
They think it's all over, and Dagda it is now. LDLC finished the last Nexus Tower 17-4 on the scoreboard. A clean, concise 23-minute win against Atleta. And what a way to do it. Now looking to pad the stats just a little bit as they want some extra kills before the game is over. In goes Ents though. He finds one. He gets the shutdown. We take those Ents.
Yeah, pushes himself up to just one, or almost. Actually, yeah, to that 1 KDA, you know, totally worth it for Ents to make sure he can come out looking squeaky clean. But it is just a little bit unfortunate there for Atleta. LDLC, you can see kind of in a league of their own right now in Group D. And right now, 2 wins today. They're already sitting on 3 from last week. This is them looking at seeing if they can have that perfect group score.
5-0 for LDLC, and the exact opposite, unfortunately, for Atleta as well. 0-5, which means we have a very interesting group because LDLC now, I believe, are guaranteed to go through in first seed. If I'm not mistaken, everyone else has at least 2 losses. But that means now the fight for second seed is on Dagda, which is very exciting because that's going to be our next matchup as well. We are going to have Bisons versus the Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition. Do not touch that browser. This is the most important game remaining in Group D. You don't want to miss it.